because as we gather today, we do so at a very pivotal moment. Across the country, equity in education is under attack from executive actions restricting diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts to those that threaten the very foundation of educational equity. We are faced with the undermining of decades of progress. These efforts threaten not only institutions of higher learning, but the very ideals of fairness and opportunity that AAUW has stood for and championed for over 140 years. Thank you so much for completing the poll. At AAUW, our mission is clear: to advance gender equity for women and girls through research, education, and advocacy. And while these times are certainly challenging, they also affirm the importance and value of what we do, whether through our policy work, our critical support for women scholars, or our commitment to inclusive access and success in higher education. Today's webinar is designed to equip and empower. Here's what we'll be diving into. First, understanding executive orders and their impact on higher education, what these policies mean, and what's at stake. Next, federal cuts to research and their implications, how these cuts may impact AAUW and our fellows and grantees. Next, reaffirming our commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. Why diversity, equity, and inclusion remain non-negotiable. And finally, the role of members in this crucial moment, how each of us can take meaningful action today. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Our work is more important than ever. From our policy advocacy on Capitol Hill, to supporting women scholars through our fellowships and grants, to empowering branches to make a difference in their communities, AAUW is committed to defending education as a space for inclusion and opportunity. But we can't do this alone. Member involvement has never been more critical, whether it's contacting elected officials, organizing at the branch level to build community, or simply showing up to conversations like this one. Your voice matters. There is power in unity. There is strength in our shared purpose, in our impact, and in our stories. And together we can create real, lasting change. Thank you for being here, for standing strong and in solidarity, and for continuing this vital work. Now, let's get started. First, we'll hear from our Senior Director of Policy and Member Advocacy, Megan Cassell. Megan?
Thank you, Gloria. I wanted to start off first by taking a look at how you were responding, which, how are we all reacting to the myriad of executive orders that we've seen? I have to say, as the policy director, I am very excited that almost a majority of you are doing more advocacy work, and that many of you're having these conversations at the branch level. And for those who haven't changed their activities, that might be because you've already been leaning in, so I appreciate that. So something that I want to lay out at the front is ground us all by sharing what is an executive order. You might hear me refer to them as EOs. So what are they and what are they not? So executive orders, they're directives from a president that apply to federal agencies. They're really powerful tools in terms of shaping agency priorities, but they cannot override rules passed by Congress. So this means while they can really have an influence on policy implementation by different agencies, they cannot repeal laws like Title IX, like the Civil Rights Act. I also want to let everybody know that because AAUW does not receive federal funding, we are not subjected to the funding threats that many schools and universities are facing when executive orders or agencies' rules are trying to curtail civil rights enforcement and other items. So we really have seen a spate of a whole slew of executive and administrative actions in the past couple months that really do aim to do just that. So we've actually seen some executive orders, and this is the one that really started us on this conversation internally at the national office, is the effort to erase illegal discrimination or illegal DEI. And I'm just going to say, don't use the acronyms. That DEI is, that as an acronym has become so toxic. But yet we know that the values that AUW members hold dear are ones of promoting equity, are ones that are inclusive and looking for diversity in our branches, in our policy work, and making sure that there's inclusion, diversity, and equity in higher education. So make people say the words. We're seeing attacks. We've already had seen attacks on race-conscious admissions from the Supreme Court. So this isn't new, but we're seeing so much more of it in the past couple of weeks. I'm not going to go through all of the executive orders, but I just want to highlight a couple of, I wanted to ground us all that executive orders, they're going to impact different groups differently. They're going to impact the agencies much differently than nonprofit organizations. And that gives us a tremendous opportunity when it comes to advocating and standing up for folks whose rights are being undermined. So in addition to executive orders, I did also want to acknowledge that we are seeing many other attacks, especially in the higher ed space, and we are tracking budget proposals that would tax college scholarships, making higher education even less accessible for lower income students. There's also budget proposals that would potentially eliminate graduate student loan programs, especially those who serve women and women of color. And these are the kinds of things that make AUW even more important. We've seen reductions in force, which is a fancy way of saying firing of many, many people at the Department of Education. And disproportionately hit by those reductions has been the Department of Education's Office of Civil Rights, who's focused on ensuring that students have all of their rights afforded to them when they're in educational institutions. So both individually and collectively, these actions are chipping away at the promise of equal opportunity in higher education. But I want to let you know, we are not powerless. AUW is not only advocating at the federal level, we're going to be working even harder to equip members like you to act locally. So whether that is standing up at a town hall, providing comments, meeting in district with your representatives, or showing up at school board meetings, your voice matters. So I'm going to end this section by saying this. Our movement was founded by women who refused to accept exclusion in higher education, and that legacy continues. So whether we call it DEI, whether we embrace the value of diversity, equity, and inclusion, these executive orders may come and go, but our commitment to equity does not waver. So I'll speak more about this a little bit later, but my goal is that all of you and all of your members continue to stay informed, stay engaged, help us hold institutions and our democracy accountable, And together we can ensure that every student, regardless of race, gender, income, background, has the opportunity to learn and thrive and lead. So there's a couple of specific actions. I'll talk a little bit more about this in a moment, but let me turn things over to our Chief of Staff, Shannon Wolf, who is going to speak a little bit more about what these funding cuts, the funding cuts that we have seen, and what that means, especially in the realm of higher education. So, Shannon?
Thanks, Megan, and welcome to everyone. So glad you could join us tonight. There's a couple of issues that we wanted to address tonight with this webinar, specific concerns that we're hearing from members. And one of them is about the impact of the federal funding cuts on AUW, both the national office and on our fellows and our alumni, and also on diversity, equity, and inclusion. Hearing a lot from members of some concerns about that. So we wanted to address both of those issues tonight. While many of the executive orders impact higher education, and we'll be talking about those from a higher education lens, a lot of them also impact the K through 12 work that a lot of you are doing and the branch work that a lot of you are doing. So while we're going to be focused on higher education tonight, I hope that you'll also sort of think about this expansively about how it can relate to your other work that may not be directly related to higher education, but maybe more focused on K through 12. So starting with the federal funding freeze, a few things sort of happened at the same time. So in late January, there was an executive order that basically said, you know, all federal funding totally frozen, right? There was immediate litigation from that. That executive order was later rescinded. You probably remember that time of nobody having any idea what was going to move forward or not. And while that executive order was rescinded, the purpose of it, which was to drastically reduce federal funding, is being achieved through other types of action, as Megan mentioned. So there's been staffing cuts and layoffs. The budgeting process will absolutely impact many department budgets that deal with federal funding. Attempted elimination of the Department of Education are just a few. And all these demonstrate the intent to significantly limit federal funding dollars, as we know. In addition to that, the National Institutes of Health proposed to cap indirect costs at 15%. There is a lawsuit around that issue as well in a current temporary injunction. But if that were to continue, that would be very disruptive to federal funding, as well as many organizations have indirect costs that are well above 25%, particularly in colleges and universities. So the question we've been getting from members is, do these federal cuts impact AUW and how? And the easy answer is, as Megan mentioned, that we are not dependent on federal funds from the national office. AUW's national revenue model is not impacted directly by the federal funding cuts. We are funded by members. We're funded by people. We're funded by foundations and companies that believe in our mission and work. And really, that's a testament to your dues, your gifts to AUW now and in the past that led to a fairly sizable endowment that we now use to pay for our fellowships and grants work. And so we're not as impacted directly in terms of the operational budget by the federal funding cuts as some of our peer organizations, as the colleges and universities that are in your local communities may be impacted because they do get direct federal funding. So we're particularly grateful that at this time, our organization is structured in this way, and really that's because of all of you. However, these cuts may impact those that we seek to serve, particularly our fellows and alumni and colleges and universities in our communities. AUW values research, right? I think we hopefully can all agree that research is important to advance knowledge, cure diseases, fix little problems, fix big problems. And that there's a lot of value in that, but there's also value in research in that it can advance women's careers. If you want a career in academia and you want to continue that, you need research to do that in many cases. And so those federal funding cuts are really going to have an impact or may have an impact on women as well. However, it's important to note that not all colleges and universities are going to be impacted in the same ways. So, there's different levels of funding for colleges and universities depending on where you are in the country and what the college focuses on. Just as there are different ways that colleges and universities express their diversity, equity, and inclusion commitments. So it really does matter college to college. And you are all in different communities, and your local colleges and universities and your scholarship recipients, since we know many of you run scholarship programs or support scholarship programs locally, may be experiencing these federal cuts in some different ways. So it could differ depending on where you are. So what can we do? Can we see the next slide, please? So at the AAUW National, we're going to be evaluating the impact on our scholars, so on our fellows and alumni. We've been, sort of making sure that we're responsive to those that are reaching out now. I really think the impact on our fellows, we're going to find out over the next, 6 months to a year. It's not as immediate right now, but as we see folks apply for next year's grants, as we see the awards go out this year and our folks' ability to continue the work that they've told us that they're doing, I think that's when we're going to find out a lot more about the impact. So we're going to continue to evaluate that impact on our fellows. And we hope that we're going to continue our funding of our fellows and grantees, and we hope that all of you who have scholarship programs will continue to do so as well. We will be looking to see if we need to perhaps, think about our programs in a different way or augment them, potentially increase some funding, and hopefully that'll be something that you can consider as well from your branch. But branches can also look for ways to be impactful. If you're engaged with your local colleges and universities already, reach out to your contacts if you haven't already and ask about the impact of these federal funding cuts or the diversity, equity, and inclusion executive orders. You can be the eyes and ears on the ground in ways that we can't at the national office. So if you've had these discussions and you'd be willing to share some of what you're learning and what they're telling you, we'd love for you to email us at executive@aauw.org. Carson, could you put that in the chat? That would be great if we could chat that out to everybody. But it's executive@aauw.org. We'd love to learn, just to hear what you're hearing in your local communities. We are doing outreach from the national office, but it's always helpful to hear sort of what the branches are seeing firsthand as well. So moving to diversity, equity, and inclusion, if we could see the next slide. Thank you. What we're hearing from members is basically, can we say the words, right? Is diversity, equity, inclusion something that's going to continue on the AAUW national website? Are we going to take the DEI toolkit down? These are the types of questions that we're hearing from members quite a bit. So I wanted to specifically address them today. And as Megan mentioned earlier, the executive orders are really about impact on federal agencies and programs. And so the words and even more importantly, the concepts of diversity, equity, and inclusion are not against the law. The executive orders talk about illegal DEI, but that is not defined, and there is no law around diversity, equity, and inclusion that has changed. And so it's really important in this time to stay true to our mission of gender equity for women and girls, to stay true to our vision of equity for all, and stay true to our commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. Next slide, please. So diversity, equity, inclusion is really important. And I think, as Megan mentioned, when we talk about DEI really quickly, or people say, I hate DEI, I love DEI, no matter where you fall on this spectrum, shortening that phrase to DEI, I think in some ways allows us to not really investigate some of the concepts. And it is these are really important concepts. They're all different concepts, which we'll talk about in a second. But they're all equally, not equally, but they all very important. Diversity, equity, inclusion has been shown to drive innovation and better outcomes. It improves learning environments and learning outcomes. And really importantly, it is there to ensure equal access to opportunity, which is a foundational belief of AAUW. Next slide, please. So what can members do to support diversity, equity, inclusion? So I want to be really mindful in talking about this because we know that there are varying comfort levels with these concepts. And depending sometimes in part in where you live in this country and in your specific community, there are varying comfort levels to speaking out about diversity, equity, inclusion. You need to do what is best for you and your community of AAUW members. That said, there are lots of ways to be engaged in this work, and some people are at very different spectrums. There are folks that are at the beginning of understanding or perhaps need to reacquaint themselves with the definitions of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Really easy for you to do that by looking at the DEI toolkit, the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion toolkit on our website. There are a lot of great resources. There's an entire page on key concepts and definitions. And I want to take a moment to specifically shout out the branch programming ideas. They're called plug and plays. And the very first plug and play on that page is going to be talking about the differences between diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's a really great way, even at your branch level, if you've talked about it before, to reintroduce those concepts and have another conversation about it. How are people feeling in this time? And what can you as a branch do? In these changing times, we want to continue to engage and talk about these issues within your communities and particularly within your branch, particularly where areas where people may feel isolated in supporting diversity, equity, inclusion. Your branch community can support you. So I would really encourage you to continue to have those conversations locally. Issues of systemic inequities do not go away simply because we don't talk about them anymore or we don't use particular words. So we really need to stay engaged in this work. You will not see us change the language on the website. We are not changing our commitment to diversity, equity, inclusion. We are not taking down the toolkit. All of those things will remain available and as resources to you all. One interesting way that I've seen recently for branches to be engaged in diversity, equity, and inclusion was a really great letter that the Carbondale, Illinois branch had sent out to their local college system saying that their branch supported the diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts of that local college university system and urged them to continue to champion those ideals. And it was just a really, I think, great way for a branch to be involved locally to show their support for their local college system. If you're interested in seeing a template of that letter, I'm happy to share it. Just email us at executive@aauw.org and we will definitely get a copy of that over to you. But that's a really great way for folks to get involved and sort of go beyond a little bit your branch discussions, which is really important. And I would really encourage you to continue to do that, but that can be another way to be involved. And I'm gonna bounce it back over to Megan.
Okay, so I want to let all of you know that this is a topic that Shannon and Gloria and I, we spend a lot of time talking about this. And Shannon is really right about everybody on this call, all of the branch members, our entire collective AAUW. We have the potential of having a real impact and standing up when others can't. And we have a tremendously strong network to build upon. We have more than 100,000 members, supporters, advocates nationwide. So we have the ability, even if change comes slowly at the federal level, pity me that I'm sitting in DC, but change can take a lot of different forms and we can have meaningful change despite what we're hearing out of Washington, DC. We have a strong history of doing this and we're not backing down. And I think you will hear us say many times over the next year, couple of years, that there are things that we can do to join together, to learn, share out what we're hearing, take action, give where it's going to be needed most. So if we step forward for a slide, just want to give you a couple more specific examples around this. And it is important that we stay a strong, thriving organization. And that means, it's show up, bring somebody with you, whether it be a friend, a colleague, your daughter, your granddaughter. Our voices are going to strengthen our collective impact. Everybody showing up today, thank you, because we know the benefit of being lifelong learners and really understanding things. I think one of the things that is so important to me, I get a lot of questions about, there was an executive order posted 5 minutes ago. What are we going to do? Shall we march in the streets? And my first reaction is, let me read the thing. Let's see what it is. Let's see what it actually applies to, how much of it is messaging, how much of it is going to be impactful, so that we can focus our actions together. And that's a real part of the learning. And bringing people along, providing people the tools to learn more. We just recognized Equal Pay Day yesterday. We had a new report, The Simple Truth About the Pay Gap. And I hope that, and we'll be making sure that everybody's had, for all of our branch leaders, have a resource and a toolkit and talking points about the pay gap and about its causes and how we got there. We've got the DEI toolkit. So understanding what actions are impacting women. Sharing with us, though, I can't tell you how important this is because, you're looking at 3 people right now. There's only so much that we will experience personally. And I want to share with you something that was shared with me from my branch in my state. So our state convention is coming up. We're going to have the junior ROTC do a color guard. And a week before our conference, we got a letter saying that color guard could not show up. The junior ROTC could not show up at our state conference. They didn't provide any more rationale than a letter from the Department of Defense that was referencing the executive order on illegal DEI. These are scare tactics. Quite frankly, I looked at that letter and I said, we should share that out with more people. That should not cause us to retreat. That should cause us to stand up, write a letter to the editor. Where are we seeing these things and where can we call them out? That this is not right. There's nothing illegal about what we are doing. And we need to keep standing strong at this moment. So when you see something like that, please share it with us, because we also have coalition partners who are able to take different types of actions, whether they can take more legal actions than we are, or whether we can use it to inform some of our policy strategies. And I'm sure that everybody is aware of our 2-Minute Activist platform, and where we basically allow, or we're giving you the words of, here is an issue, here's the right time. But the 2-Minute Activist, that's only when you have 2 minutes of time. But I hope that everybody here tonight is really going to commit all of us to being part of our action network, which is both going to have our 2-minute actions, and it's going to have the actions like tonight, which take a little bit more, like 28 minutes more, to have this conversation. We recognize that advocacy isn't one size fits all, and we're really what you can expect from us is more branch resources, including talking points about specific issues, especially as it relates to higher education, offline actions, online actions, different ways that you can show your commitment to gender equity. And I hope all of you saw that in addition to our Greatest Needs Fund, we want to recognize that there are some folks, some of our members would like to more distinctly direct their donations to AAUW. So we launched last week the Defending Higher Education Fund and a Public Policy Fund. So this is not to diminish the greatest needs, because the advocacy work has always been a great beneficiary, so I'm never going to discourage that. But we wanted to make sure that we were recognizing a real desire coming from our members, and we hear you and we're standing with you. So with that, let me turn it back to Gloria.
Thank you so much, Megan, and thank you, Shannon, for leading this very, very important conversation. And I want to thank everyone who joined us today for this vital conversation on defending equity, standing strong against attacks on equity in education. We hope you leave this webinar not only more informed, but hopefully more inspired. because the challenges facing higher education are real, but so is our collective power to confront them. As we've seen today, executive actions and funding cuts have serious implications, but they also underscore the importance of our continued advocacy, our shared commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and our refusal to back down. So AAUW's strength, as we know, lies in our unity and in the action each of us takes from this moment forward. So stay connected and please do stay involved. We also want to hear from you. Your feedback, your ideas, and your leadership will continue to shape our work. Together, we can ensure equity in education doesn't just survive, but that it thrives. So thank you once again for all that you do. And thank you for standing with us in solidarity. Let's keep moving forward together. Have a good evening.
And Gloria, before we go, we talked about how we've been listening to our members, and there was at least one, we did have one outstanding question in the Q&A that I wanted to respond to, and it's about AAUW's lobbyists. And I want to let you know, we have a very small team. You're looking at 1/3 of the team. And this is a challenging environment. Who you're not seeing on the team is actually our AAUW members who are also part of our volunteer lobby corps, who do non-constituent visits up to Capitol Hill, and they will be doing that tomorrow. By the way, if any of you are ever in DC, let us know. We'd love to have you come up to the Hill with us. But the reality is, we are not an organization that has an army of lobbyists. We do not contract out to K Street, and I am not the all-powerful Oz. Our lobbying efforts are only as strong as our grassroots and our membership voice. Without our membership voice, me going up to Capitol Hill is not going to have the impact you think. It's only impactful when I'm writing a wave of constituent feedback. So, as I said, I thank you for your time. You are here. You are interested. You are motivated. We know that branches around the country are interested in advocating for policy change that's going to have an impact both in their communities and in this country as a whole. But we can't this is not the time that we can sit on the sidelines and hope that somebody else is being paid to go knock on those doors. We need people to show up. We need people to express themselves in their communities, in district meetings, at those school board meetings, and it's going to take a little bit of work. But that's our commitment to you, is that we are here by your side. We will help provide guidance and leadership and support so that you can be the most effective voice in your community, and together that we can be a really collective voice for this country. So I don't think I'm missing any other questions, but Gloria, I just wanted to make sure that I threw that in. I'd like to be the great and powerful Oz, but that just wanted to, I've gotten that question before, so I did want to make sure I acknowledged that. So I stomped on your greetings or salutations to everyone, but thank you for letting me hop in.
Thank you so much, Megan. That was right, very appropriate, right on time. And we appreciate those who reached out with a question and you were able to give them a good response. So once again, we just want to thank everyone for attending. Thank them for what they are doing on the advocacy level, at their local and state level. And just thank you for helping us to continue to move forward together. Thank you.